What's up, everybody? It's your friend Fast Feet Freddy coming to you with another video. Before we get into it, please remember to like and subscribe for your chance to win 1 million shares in Blockbuster video stock. And with that, we're talking about the real reason that TCU ain't ready for Coach Prime and the Colorado Buffaloes. So number one, we're going to start with the TCU offense versus the Buffs defense. Before we do get into that, though, I do want to give a special shout out to Vibe Zone Sports. If you see his channel, or the link is down in the description below, go visit my boy. True talent in his videos. He takes the time to break these videos down. He doesn't just rush these videos out. He actually cares about the quality of his videos. Special shout out to that dude. True talent. Get at me, boy. Let's get something together. And with that, we're getting back into it. TCU offense versus the Buffaloes defense. Now, TCU has a new offensive coordinator. His name is Kendal Briles, right? Their old coordinator. I believe he went over to Clemson. So Kendal Briles was over at Arkansas. And he's been at Florida. Now, he's been at some good schools. He's been at Florida State. I think he was there for a year. He's been at Houston for a few years. Houston had some good numbers. He's been to Florida Atlantic, and he's also been at Baylor. You know what I'm saying? He had some good numbers over at Baylor, too. And so while he was at Arkansas, the passing game averaged 234 yards per game, and the rushing game averaged 236 yards per game. But here's the thing, okay? I would be concerned with this hire for TCU had he still had Max Duggan. I would be very concerned because he knows how to use those kind of quarterbacks. So you don't have Max Duggan anymore. He's gone to the NFL. He's got a lot less quarterback to work with. TCU's quarterback this year would be the starting quarterback at the beginning of the year for 2022, and that's Chandler Morris. Now, Chandler Morris is not a dual threat quarterback the way that Max Duggan was. Matter of fact, the 1-11 Colorado Buffalo defense last year knocked Chandler Morris out in the end of the third quarter in the first game between Colorado and TCU. And that brought in Max Duggan, and the rest is history, TCU fans. So you owe Colorado a huge thank you for the year that you guys had last year. So you're welcome. But moving on from that, let's talk about Chandler Morris in that game where he didn't have any touchdown passes. He didn't have any rushing yards. And, TCU had one punt return. Colorado was actually in this game all the way up until the third quarter. The only touchdown that TCU had in the beginning of the first half was a punt return for a touchdown. And then, when Chandler wasn't getting it done in the air, TCU started rushing the ball heavily. And, they got a rushing touchdown. And the score started to take off after Max Duggan took over at the end of the third quarter. So yes, Horned Frog Nation, you have a new offensive coordinator, but you don't have a good quarterback, and that's going to be one of the issues. Your other issue is you lost 8 players, actually 11 players total to the NFL. You lost 8 wide receivers. You lost 28 total players from last year's team. You haven't completely even replenished that. So, hey, don't be mad at me. I'm spitting facts here. I've looked at your roster from last year, look at the roster this year, and even though you bring over Alabama transfers, JoJo Earl and Trey Sanders, they're not enough to recover from everything else that you've lost. Now, let's talk about Charles Kelly's defense. This is Charles Kelly, and you look him in his eyes and you tell him, winning multiple national championships and working under Nick Saban don't mean nothing. But look here, man, Charles Kelly is coming. But so is Sal Sinceri and Nick Williams and Kevin Mathis and Andre Hart. But I'm about spitting facts. I like to get hyped, but we're going to spit some facts. So we're going to talk about Charles Kelly's defense. So Charles Kelly runs a 4-2-5 defense. It's a hybrid between a 4-3 defense, which defends the run well, and a 3-3-5 defense, which is geared more towards pass protection and bringing pressure. So the 4-2-5 defense is born, and Nick Saban and Alabama have been using it along with Charles Kelly. So now that we've gotten to revisit the defense for the Colorado Buffaloes, let us look a little deeper into the depth that they have at each position. So starting at the defensive end on the right side, you will have Savell Smalls, Arden Walker, and Chance Main. At nose tackle, your rotation will be Leonard Payne, Thomas Bishop, Amari McNeil, and Mason Maddox. Starting rotation at defensive tackle will be Shane Coates, Taj Alston, and Chaz Wallace. On the other side, defensive end or joker position, starting with Derek McClendon, Jordan Dominic, and Dave Harris. Your Mike linebacker starts with Demoy Kennedy, Marvin Ham, and Isaac Hurtado. And the weak side linebacker position will include Levante Bentley, Brendan Grant, Jeremiah Brown, and Kerry Eogan. And as we move towards the secondary positions, please note that Shiloh Sanders could possibly play any one of these positions, so we will include him without saying. Starting off at left corner will be Travis Hunter, Kendrick Breedlove, and Omarion Cooper. Your strong safety rotation will be Trevor Woods and Vito Tisdale. Your free safety rotation will be Cameron Silman Craig and Travis J. And at the right corner, we will start with Cormani McLean and Jaquez Robinson. And finally, at nickelback, we have Miles Slusher and Carter Stoutmeyer. So look, Horned Frog Nation, this will not be an easy feat by any means. But we do hope that you keep the same attitude going into the game. Moving on. So the Colorado Buffaloes offense is run by first-year offensive coordinator Sean Lewis, coming out of Kent State, ran a prolific offense, had an offer from Notre Dame, chose to stay with Coach Prime and the Buffaloes. And the TCU Horned Frogs defense is led by second-year defensive coordinator Joe Gillespie. Now, last year while at Kent State, Sean Lewis's offense averaged 215 passing yards per game and 202 rushing yards per game. And that's without half the talent that he currently has on his offense. And as a side note, they scored 22 points on the national champion Georgia Bulldogs, unlike the Horned Frogs. So look, we're going to go through the offensive depth chart for the Colorado Buffaloes quickly because the biggest story in this offense versus defense scenario is the defense for TCU and all their losses. So let's get into it. Starting us off at the wide receiver X position, rotation beginning with Travis Hunter, and then Jalen Ellis, Omarion Miller, and Michael Harrison. Wide receiver Z rotation will start with Xavier Weaver, Adam Hopkins, and Assad Wasim. Your wide receiver F rotation will be Jimmy Hort Jr., Willie Gaines, Tavarish Dawson, Jack Ryling, and Caleb Mathis. To start off your big boys up front at left tackle will be Gerard Christian and Isaiah Jatta. And left guard will be Tyler Brown and Jack Wilty. At center you have Van Wells and Landon Beebe. At right guard your rotation will be Jack Bailey and Luke Edcart. At right tackle, you will have Savion Washington, Reggie Young, and Ben Resnick. Your tight end rotation will start with Javon Antonio, Louis Passarello, Eric Olson, Caleb Faria, and Elijah Yelverton. Your quarterback will be Shadur Sanders, and his backups will be Ryan Staub, Kason Wiseman, and Colton Allen. Running back rotation will be Alton McCaskill, Cavassier Smoke, Dylan Edwards, Anthony Hankerson, and Charlie Alfredall. And finally, your fullback will be Champion Johnson. So these are your 2023 Colorado Buffalo offensive players. I guarantee you will not have problems scoring this year. Sean Lewis will use these guys efficiently, aggressively, and we will put points on the board. But now, I want to move on to the TCU defense led by Joe Gillespie. Now, Horned Frog Nation, I know that you think that I am over-exaggerating whenever I say that Max Duggan was the reason you had a great year, but it wasn't your defense. He was the reason because your defense was 95th in total offense allowed. Do you know who was better than you last year in defense? Kent State. So I don't know what that says, but it was plain as day and painfully obvious in the title game when Georgia blew you out, and you also let plenty of other teams score a lot of points on you. You want an example? Here you go. SMU 34 points. Kansas State, your first meeting, 28 points. Kansas 31 points. West Virginia 31 points. Oklahoma State 40 points. Texas Tech 24 points. Baylor 28 points. Second meeting with Kansas State 31 points. Michigan 45 points. And of course, Georgia 65 points. So why do I bring this up? Well, probably because you've lost a lot of pieces, the best pieces that you had on that defense, to either the NFL draft or eligibility or the transfer portal. Let me go down the list. So on the right side, your defensive end, you lost senior Dylan Horton and Colt Ellison, both seniors. You lost some depth at your nose tackle in Timon Mitchell. You lost your entire left defensive end group, Terrell Cooper, George Ellis, and Lowell Ugwak. You lost middle linebacker Wyatt Harris. You keep both your weak side linebackers, but you lose your star strong side linebacker and playmaker D. Winters to the NFL draft. You lose your number one cornerback prospect, Travius Hodges Tomlinson, to the NFL draft. And you also lose his backup, Kenyon Stewart. And you lose safety Bud Clark and move Abe Kamara to nickel. Why do you move Abe Kamara to nickel? Well, it's because you lose both of your nickels, Millard Bradford and Josh Foster. So once again, please don't be mad at me. I'm only spitting facts. I'm only giving you the details of the battle to come between TCU and the Colorado Buffaloes in Fort Worth. But if you think that this showdown is going to be a blowout and that you guys are anywhere as prepared as you might believe because of your run last year, you are sadly mistaken, because you have lost a lot of weapons, a lot of depth, and your defense ain't that good. So, Horned Frog Nation, let me leave you with this, and it will probably leave you a little ruffled. But the team that you had last year wasn't Sonny Dykes' team. It was Gary Patterson's team. A lot of the players and most of the players that you lost to NFL or eligibility were Gary Patterson's players. So, who recruited Max Duggan? Gary Patterson. Who knew how to play defense? Gary Patterson. Who knew how to recruit the players that took you deep into the playoffs last year? Gary Patterson. Who has now taken a Texas team who was down in the rankings defensively and has brought them back to life? Gary Patterson. Let it be known, Horned Frog Nation, you no longer have Gary Patterson's team. You no longer have Max Duggan. And you're not ready for Coach Prime and the Colorado Buffaloes. But guess what? We coming.